Hello guys, welcome back to another video. Unreal Engine 5.5 has just been released, and there are tons of new features added to the engine that improves a wide variety of different areas, including but not limited to animation, rendering, virtual production side of the engine, motion design, and much more. So in this video, we'll be covering over everything new that is coming to Unreal Engine 5.5, as well as some of the major new updates and new experimental features. So without further ado, let's get right into the video. So the first biggest update to Unreal Engine 5.5 is the introduction of the new experimental MegaLights plugin. Essentially, MegaLights is a new experimental feature that allows artists to add hundreds of dynamic shadow casting lights to their scene. Artists can now light scenes playfully without constraints or impact on performance. With MegaLights, lighting artists for the first time can use textured area lights with soft shadows, lighting functions, media texture playback, and volumetric shadows on consoles and PC. MegaLights not only reduces the cost of dynamic shadowing, it also reduces the cost of unshadowed light evaluation, making it possible to use expensive light sources such as textured area lights on consoles. Now, Epic announced at Unreal Fest that they would release the MegaLights demo, so we still haven't gotten the sample project yet with the release of 5.5. They should release it sometime this month, or maybe they will after I make this video, but when they do, I'll make a separate video on that, showcasing the sample project that you see here. Now, if you guys are trying to learn game development in Unreal Engine 5.5, if you're trying to create your own game, I have a full multiplayer survival game course on my website, smartpoly.teachable.com, which will show you how to make a Steam multiplayer survival game from scratch, from start to finish. So we'll create things like an inventory system, crafting system, harvesting and gathering system, a tribes or clan system, building system, and we'll even create this open world map that you see here with different AI that will spawn procedurally and much more. This course is packed with tons of content, and if you purchase it right now, you can get it actually bundled with my remastered course. So basically, I'm remastering the course and adding lots of new features like controller input support and much more. So you can get both of those courses bundled for the price of one. So you don't want to miss out on this limited time promotion. Check out the link in the description below, or head over to my website, smartpoly.teachable.com, if you want to learn more about what it takes to create games inside of Unreal Engine 5. This course will get you started on your game development journey inside of Unreal Engine. So make sure you check it out, a link in the description below, and let's get right back to the video. Moving on, the next biggest new feature that was introduced in Unreal Engine 5.5 is the new experimental mutable customizable characters and meshes. So the new Mutable plugin generates dynamic skeletal meshes, materials, and textures at runtime for creating character customization systems and dynamic content. So you can sort of think of this as a character customization system where the player wants to, swap out their t-shirt for a jacket, or they want to take off their helmet. Basically, when you're doing that in a game, you're going to have certain meshes that will overlap. So for example, if your character has a jacket on, they want to take it off, and underneath they just want to wear a t-shirt, you're going to have to show things like the arm meshes or hide certain parts of the body mesh. That way they don't overlap with the clothing and you don't get this weird flickering. Basically, the Mutable plugin handles all of that in real time. It has logic for texture merging to reduce draw calls, morph baking to reduce GPU load, and a lot more other different features that will just help with the overall performance of your character customization system. Now again, we still haven't gotten any sort of documentation on how to use this plugin or any sample projects, so hopefully in the future Epic will release something that we can dig apart and learn from, because right now it's very hard to actually learn anything new about this plugin. Now, a new big feature in Unreal Engine 5.5 is the new audio-driven animation for Metahuman Animator. So essentially now you can use audio to animate facial performance in the Metahuman Animator. So you can use audio assets in Metahuman Animator to generate facial animation. So for example, you could just upload a audio file of you talking, upload it into the Metahuman Animator, and it will automatically create the animation data for the Metahuman just from that audio file. So you don't need to use an iPhone and capture, facial data. You can just use the audio file now. Along with that, they've added optimized metahumans in Unreal Engine. So this is something that they've had in UEFN, or Unreal Editor for Fortnite, for a while now, but they haven't added it to Unreal Engine till today in Unreal Engine 5.5. So with the release of 5.5, we've taken optimization approaches used in great success to bring metahumans to UEFN and applied the same techniques to Unreal Engine metahumans. So now when exporting metahumans, users will be able to request either the cinematic or complete existing full flat metahumans with the original resolution assets, or you can pick the high, medium, and low or optimized metahumans setting. So basically optimize metahumans with baked textures and reduced complexity. So as you can see, the Unreal Cinematic metahuman is 800 megabytes cooked average, and the Unreal Engine optimized high is 60 megabytes. So basically we can now have metahumans used inside of games and have them actually optimized for games rather than mainly for cinematics. So this is a huge update to metahumans, and I'll actually probably be looking into using or utilizing metahumans in my games and projects because of the optimization that they've done to metahumans inside of Unreal Engine. Another big update in Unreal Engine 5.5 is the new game animation sample project. In Unreal Engine 5.5, they updated the project to have fully multiplayer replication support. So now it's fully multiplayer replicated. You can use it in your multiplayer games, and they've also added additional features like crouching. They have over 500 plus animations now, and there's a ton of more updates. I'll be going over all the updates to the project in a separate video, so stay tuned for that. And of course, another huge feature that has also been added is the new Nanite skeletal mesh feature. So basically, Nanite is now supported on skeletal meshes for characters, creatures, all sorts of things that have bones and animations. You can now enable Nanite to receive the same Nanite optimization that you would use normally on other normal static meshes, but now on actual movable and animated character meshes. You can also use it on metahumans as well, so this will be very useful for optimizing complex character meshes. Lumen is getting a ton of improvements in Unreal Engine 5.5. So release 5.5 includes multiple improvements to Lumen hardware ray tracing performance, focusing on being able to ship Lumen at 60 Hz on consoles. There are also several notable improvements with the increase of quality Lumen global illumination and reflections. Lumen now supports hit lighting for global illumination, a more expensive and accurate way to calculate GI, which avoids some of the limitations when using Lumen with static meshes. Another important improvement is that the newer reflection denoiser that substantially improves the sharpness of low rough reflections, as well as new support for translucency with refraction in reflections. So as you can see, there's major differences to the way that Lumen looks inside of 5.5, and even just looking over here in the reflections, you can see that the image is a lot more clearer. There's a lot more shadows and definition in some of these different pipes over here. So a lot of major improvements to Lumen in 5.5. Now hardware ray tracing is also receiving its fair bit of updates in 5.5. They made improvements to the underpinning systems, which fall into external facing hardware ray tracing category. So these lower level systems all impact the performance capabilities of Lumen, path tracing, and light baking. There are improvements to asynchronous evaluation of ray tracing code, improvements to caching, and better management of acceleration structures. The intent of these changes is to make it feasible to utilize hardware ray tracing at higher refresh rates on platforms where there is hardware support. Path Tracer is now production ready in Unreal Engine 5.5, so this means that the Path Tracer is now fully featured and also can now be used as reference for atmosphere and volumetric clouds. They've added a new spatial temporal denoiser for offline rendering through the Movie Render Queue and Movie Render Graph, as well as Linux support. So if you guys want to see all of the major updates to the Path Tracer, you can view the link in the description below. Vulkan ray tracing is now in beta, so in 5.5 Vulkan ray tracing is now enabled by default. Vulkan ray tracing features are now at parity with DirectX 12, including on the Linux platform. So this will allow the full suite of ray tracing features to be used, including things like hit lighting mode in Lumen and path tracing. Recent drivers are recommended for anyone trying to try out this feature on NVIDIA 560 Plus for Windows or 550 Plus for Linux. Now another big update is you can now mesh texture paint on to Nanite meshes. So in 5.5, they added support for painting on Nanite mesh instances with minimal performance and memory overhead. So before 5.5, the use of Nanite prevented these common mesh painting workflows, which allowed for local variation and appearance of instances of the same geometry. For 5.5, the mesh paint tool has been extended to add a new texture color painting mode that paints to the virtual textures stored on mesh components. This is to support workflows similar to vertex painting, but that scale with texture resolution instead of vertex count, which works more efficiently with Nanite meshes. A new experimental feature introduced in 5.5 is the new day sequence plugin. Basically, this is a one click of a button plugin that allows you to have a day and night cycle where you can control the time of day. You can put the sun up in the sky or put it down, and when you do that, it will create a nighttime effect where you have the moon in the sky, you can see the stars, and it's powered through the sequencer tool, so you can animate it, create a time of day animation for your game. It's fully replicated as well, and of course if you wanted to use it for creating things like movies and effects. So again, a new experimental feature introduced in 5.5. All you have to do is enable the plugin to get started with it. Another new experimental feature is first-person rendering. In 5.5, we added initial support for first-person rendering, which includes preventing player hands or weapons from clipping into world objects. So in a separate FOV, which allows developers to specify a field of view that differs from the rest of the world for their first-person assets. So as you can see, they're sort of shrinking the player mesh because it's very common in games where you run into the wall and you can see the weapon mesh clip through the wall. There's many different ways that developers have solved this issue, but now in Unreal Engine 5.5, we're getting this new feature that will actually solve that for us. As for developer iteration, the Zen server is also receiving its fair bit of updates in 5.5. Basically, this is a multi-user support or solution for the engine where people need to share cooked assets between multiple different workstations. This is more towards the medium, large size business or game studios, but basically they've added support for Windows host machines. So now you can deploy a Zen server with shared DCC on a Windows machine. Now, motion design is also getting its fair bit of updates in Unreal Engine 5.5. So there are a bunch of new cloners and effectors as well as UX enhancements. So you can see there's things like these proximity effects. Very neat bit of designs there. I haven't personally messed around too much with the motion design side of the engine yet, but as you can see, they have different type of cloner and effectors for collision, push apart effector, and they've added a new material designer, PBR workflows. So I'll leave the link to read about these new motion design updates in the description below. Now in other news, Chaos is receiving a new experimental feature, which is the new Chaos Modular Vehicles plugin. Basically, in 5.5, this is a new system that allows you to have real-time vehicle construction and destruction, allowing components to be added or removed dynamically at runtime. So as you can see, we have this vehicle with some wings. So you can add wings to your vehicle at runtime, and it'll give it the ability to fly, or you could remove that entirely. A neat little feature for creating, games or modular aspects to your vehicle. PCG or procedural content generation is also receiving a ton of different updates to the PCG graph and a bunch of new features. So they've added new nodes for generating more complex structures like fences or buildings. So these are all the lists of brand new nodes. And they've added a new geometry processing system, which allows you to modify, combine, and output meshes directly from PCG using Unreal Engine's dynamic mesh type. So for example, a PCG building generator can populate its sides with modules instances using grammar and produce a unique geometry for its rooftops and floors, and it can resample and produce a rooftop geometry to spawn assets on top. It can also be used to produce its own shape model to apply the grammar on using a primitive cross-section operation. They've also added easier support for things like spline meshes, so you can see there's road spline mesh is cutting through the trees there. And they've also added pathfinding, which is a new feature which allows for a new pathfinding algorithm. So you can see the different points that is creating a spline path to those different points through this mountainous terrain. And this would be very useful for creating things like, a road path, or if you wanted to spawn certain trees, rocks, or different props all over the pathway or the spline that has been, procedurally generated. There are a lot of other different updates and nodes to PCG. I'm not going to cover every single new feature, but as you can see, there are tons of additional nodes and operators added to the PCG graph. As for platform updates, there have been several platform updates to many different platforms that use the Unreal Editor. So for example, Unreal Engine 5.5 brings several improvements to help content development for mobile games, connected Android device profile capture to allow for previewing a specific device. And also for the mobile renderer in 5.5, they've added support for debuffer decals, rec lights, capsule shadows, and point light shadows, as well as screen space reflections. Audio is also getting its fair bit of updates. They've added a new audio insights debugging tool so you can fully debug your audio, and they've also added some new updates to meta sounds and some quality of life improvements. Another big feature introduced in 5.5 is instance actors. Instance actors is a new feature. It's mainly used for games, but it's designed to reduce the overhead of having too many actors in your game world. It does so by replacing actors with mass entities and converts them on the fly between actors and entities. So this is the process called dehydration or hydration. Basically, it provides a lot more performance out of densely populated open world environments. So this would be in the case where you have different trees that the player has to interact with, bushes, rocks. It will convert those meshes into actual actors that will have logic inside of them so that the player can interact with them. Again, this is another neat feature that is added to the engine. It'll be definitely something to check out. Another neat thing is the automatic navigation link generation. So in 5.5, this is a new feature to automatically generate short distance navigation links. So as you can see, the AI, this is the path finding that the AI can run on all of the green parts. But as you can see, these arrows now represent parts where the AI can jump off of or navigate based on your gameplay logic. So if they're chasing a player, they'll be able to jump off of these cliff parts. And now this is just a supported feature in 5.5. There's a lot of updates to virtual production in Unreal Engine 5.5, including Live Link Hub Beta. So in 5.5, Live Link Hub will be moved up to a beta status. This release is focused on features for professional users while maintaining the ease of use from the initial UEFN focused release. Basically, they've added third-party plugin support, data timing, timecode support, virtual subjects, skeletal attachments, and much more. You guys can read all about the new features to that in the description below. Of course, we have things like Live Link Open VR. So responding to Live Link XR plugin user feedback, we've created a new Live Link Open VR to address virtual production workflows. Live Link Open VR has the same UI and UX, but is specifically created for Steam VR tracking. So you can see I think they have the Vive tracker on here for their setup. Anyhow, you guys can check and read all about the new updates to that in the description. I'm not going to really focus too much on the virtual production side of things, but there are a lot of different new features. One thing I really want to quickly go over is the new color grading panel. So they've added a enhanced color grading UX for the ICVFX editor, and is relevant and applicable to any Unreal Engine artist who works with color grading in the post-process volumes and color correction regions. Even if NDisplay is not involved in the project as such, this panel will be promoted up for general editor use and made available for all artists. Now there are a whole lot of other different virtual production updates. Again, I'm not going to cover it in this video. Moving on, next up we have a lot of updates to animating inside of the engine. Basically, we have updates to Sequencer. Unreal Engine 5.5 brings usability improvements to Sequencer, enabling cinematic artists to control their view of contents within sequence and gain easier access to properties, filter viewport by sequence contents. This provides a more controllable interface to reduce workflow fatigue, helping users to create content faster. So I think you can see they've added some new features to the Sequencer timeline that allow you to filter. They've added hotkey support for things like hide, isolate, and show all, and a new overlay window for property bindings, tracks, sections, channels, and keys. Now, another big feature that's getting an upgrade in Unreal Engine 5.5 is the modular control rig. I covered this in, I believe, Unreal Engine 5.4. Essentially, this is a solution for control rig that allow you to rig a character model, a creature, any type of skeletal mesh so that you can animate it in the engine or use it for cinematics. In Unreal Engine 5.5, the modular control rig is adding support for new modules. So we have a quadruped module for creatures that have, 4 legs or more. And of course, we have a vehicle module now. So as you can see, they have sort of this scooter, which they could now rig using the modular control rig. So I think this is very helpful for people creating cinematics or movies. But the game side of things, you're not really going to, rig a vehicle and animate it that way. Vehicles in games are done more differently than this. So again, this is more towards the cinematic side of the engine. Now, another new feature introduced in Unreal Engine 5.5 is called rig variants. So this is a new experimental feature. Basically, rig variants are a highly experimental tools for upgrading and swapping control rig modules and functions, enabling animators to swap rigs non-destructively to different variants for backwards and forwards compatibility, so you can upgrade and swap control rig modules and functions with a new variant. And I'm guessing this sort of allows you to mix and match certain aspects of the control rig module so that you can have full dynamic control over what you want to create. The Skeletal editor inside of Unreal Engine is now production ready in Unreal Engine 5.5, so there's general improvements to working with character meshes within the Skeletal editor, enabling quicker and simpler workflows for painting and editing weights on skeletal meshes. So if you guys haven't meshed around with the new Skeletal editor in Unreal Engine, basically you can actually edit skeletal meshes inside of the engine, allowing you to fully rig a character model, creature, or whatever you want inside of the engine without having to leave the engine to go to an external program like Blender or Maya to rig your character mesh. They've added a ton of new improvements like the isolation of meshes. They've also added things like robust weight transferring tools, improved component editor, and a lasso selection. So there's a lot of more different updates that they've been adding. In Unreal Engine 5.5, to the animation side, they've added new animation deformers, so you can now craft more realistic animations and effects such as contract deformation and better cartoony style squash and stretch, with the new ability to spawn custom deformers inside of control rig and easily apply them to characters in sequencer with a single click. So as you can see, the Scorpion has sort of this cartoony squash effect, and that's all driven through the control rig that they've created for that character. Now, those are all the major big updates to Unreal Engine 5.5. Now, obviously, there was a lot more other different features that I could not cover in this video without making it an hour long. So I recommend you guys check out the release notes. I'll leave a link to it in the description below. Anyways, let me know what you guys think down in the comments down below. Which feature are you most excited about to use in Unreal Engine 5.5? Let me know down in the comments down below. Also, don't forget to leave a like on the video and make sure to hit the subscribe button because you don't want to miss out on any future videos. I'll be uploading a lot more tutorials on some of the new features in 5.5, so make sure you stick around, hit the subscribe button, and yeah, that's pretty much it for this video. So I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys in the next one.